How's everybody feeling today? Good? Tired? I want to play a quick game with you, okay? A quiz of sorts, right? Jeff, you passed out the study guides last week, right? Nope. Oh. Okay, well, okay, there's good news and bad news in this, okay? It's one that you can pass or fail, so that's the bad news. The good news is that it's self-graded, so if you fail, just don't tell anybody afterwards, okay? And the even better news is that I've given this quiz to some people who have no musical background, and they passed, so I have faith in you to be able to do this, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to say a word or a phrase, and I want you to give me the genre, all right, that I'm thinking of. It's really easy, okay? There's going to be 5, okay? So the first one I have is gangsters. Rap, okay, yes. Melinda knows how to do it. Okay, everybody's supposed to say it together. Oh.
Country music?
Oh. Big trucks and broken hearts. Pop. You're really bad at this. All right. All right. The next one. Smashed guitars. Rock and roll. Okay, good. Saxophone. Jazz. Is that a genre? I don't know much about Kenny G, so he has his own genre. What about Beethoven or Bach? Classical. In fact, Howard, I've saw some pictures with you and Bach before, right? Back in the day?
Yes.
Yes? Howard, just thank you. Yeah, okay. How'd you do? Did you get 5 out of 5? Okay. Friends, what I'm trying to say here, what I want you guys to understand is that show me the content and I'll show you the intent, right? We can clearly see this. We can see that what is in our music has an effect on how we perceive it and what it means for us. Music is embedded in nearly every part of our lives. In fact, when I think of weddings, right, you have like canon, I believe that's what it's called when the bride, canon and D, okay. I'm going to be honest with you, okay? Rochelle did most of the wedding planning. I was just there, all right? But I just, that's another story. But even like we have wedding songs, right? So my wedding song was From the Ground Up by Dan and Shay. And man, you have about 13 minutes to determine what your wedding song was if you don't remember it, or 13 minutes to hope that your wife forgets that we talked about weddings. Either way. And music is even really valuable when it comes to worship, right? When we go 6 days a week of living in the world, and we have our Sunday where we're able to come back and recenter our lives on God. It influences us. And we don't need Scripture to tell us this, right? Music is everywhere that we go. When we go to the store, right, you have music playing in the background. When you go to the restaurant, depending on what restaurant you go to, depends on the type of music that they play. Like I went to Chili's last night, and they were playing country music, which I did not know Chili's was a Texas restaurant, but I learned that yesterday. But even like airports, right? Airports, you go to the airport, they have music playing in the background because they know that you're going to be waiting at TSA, right, to get on your plane. The good thing is that you can keep your shoes on now, right? And it looks like they're bringing about where you're not going to be limited on the amount of liquid, hopefully soon. That being said, we even have elevator music, right? Music specifically designed for elevators, okay? Or even the most dreaded music, the music that you get when you're on hold. Yes, Lynn, she's keeping up. Now, when I was preparing for this sermon, I began to think about a grocery store in the South called Publix. Okay. And I don't know if a lot of you guys know about Publix, but it's just like an upscale Kroger. That being said, they would tailor the music to the type of person that they expected to be in the store at the time, right? Businesses are smart because if they can keep you comfortable, right, you begin to put more stuff in your grocery cart, right? And at the end, you spent more money, and you wonder why you have 8 packs of Oreos in your cart. And it's because you had music that you enjoyed. Now, I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I used to deliver bread, okay? And delivering bread is a really early morning affair, okay? Usually you're up by 3, you're off by noon, okay? And so I would deliver to Publix, and every single morning they would play this song on the radio there. I mouthed that because if I started singing it, you guys would be while walking out. No offense, okay? But rarely did you ever see anybody under the age of 50 at a Publix at 8 a.m. So that's the music that they were playing at the time, right? That brought back some memories, didn't it? In fact, preparing for this sermon, I remember after a choir practice, John Ledka and Rochelle and Jeff and I and Melinda were all in the office, and John said, the song that we sang tonight really reminded me of Glory of Love by Peter Cetera. And I said, by golly, that was the song, because I couldn't remember it. So God worked through us in that moment. Now, later throughout the day, right, Publix would play some older music, not older music, newer music, right? Like you'd move into like Taylor Swift, right, as you went throughout the day, or at least stuff from this decade. But the music was meant to be there for the person that they would expect. Now, music also brings about determination, right? When you get near the finish line, right? I don't know if anybody done races here? Anybody like ran in a race? I know I don't look like it. I used to do cross country. That was 15 years ago, okay? But at the end, when you get to the finish line, all right, you start to hear like "Eye of the Tiger," playing. Or you start to hear the final countdown, doo-doo, doo-doo-doo-doo, and you're like, yes, I'm going to do it, I'm there. And you're like sprinting at the end to try to get, to the end. What I'm trying to get at is knowing that music can affect and influence our lives, we've got to reflect, right? What music are we consuming in our leisure? Are we listening to Channel 955 on the radio, or are we listening to 103.5 WMUZ? And WMUZ, are we listening to 101.1 The Riff, or are we listening to 93.1 FLR, Family Life Radio? Right? Are we listening to 106.7 Detroit's Wheels? Yeah. Or are we listening to 102.7 K-Love? I want you guys to consider, when you get into the car next time, what music you're taking in. Because there's some benefits. There's some benefits that we get when we start singing about God and reflecting on Him. One of the first things that begins to happen is we reflect on the faithfulness, or the marvelous things He's done. Sorry. It says in verse 1, it says, "Oh, sing to the Lord a new song, for He has done marvelous things. His right hand and His holy arm have worked salvation for Him." You see, you begin to see ways that God has both affected yourself and the things around you. Our God does marvelous things because He's in control. Did you catch that? It says God's right hand and His holy arm have worked salvation for Him. And now this hymn was talking about Israel at the time, right? God's chosen people. But that right hand is a symbol of authority and power. God, He can do marvelous things because He is at the helm. He is steering all of the paths of everybody in the world. The second thing that begins to happen is you begin to reflect on His righteousness and His salvation. Look what it says here in verse 2. It says, "The Lord has made known his salvation. He has revealed his righteousness in the sight of nations. Now this salvation would have been a military salvation. Okay? It would be a celebration of combat, right? Israel had been given salvation over the enemy. People's lives have been saved by God. He's been provident in what he does, and he's actively working in the world. And we can apply this same salvation when we talk about the battle that we currently are in. We are trying to save as many people, as many souls for Jesus as possible. Save as many souls for eternity. And in due time, God will reveal his righteousness in the sight of nations, as he did with the nations that surrounded Israel in their day. We begin to reflect on his steadfast love and faithfulness. Okay? Look at what it says there in verse 3. It says, he's remembered his steadfast love and faithfulness to the house of Israel. All the ends of the earth have seen salvation by our God. You see, God looks out for his chosen people because he loves them. He's a God of steadfast love and faithfulness. Did you catch that word there? Steadfast. Right? His love and his faithfulness for us never ceases. It doesn't matter how we feel in the moment when we feel like God is not with us. He is steadfast in his love and faithfulness. Isn't that amazing? And the fourth thing that begins to happen, we begin to find joy. Look what it says here in verse 4. It says, make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. Break forth into joyous song and sing praises. Joy is much different than happiness. Happiness says things are going okay in the moment. Joy says things might not be going okay in the moment, but they're going to be good in the long term. Right? Joy is what gives us the ability to remember his faithfulness even when times are tough. Joy is what gives us or gives Paul the power to suffer in prison for Jesus. It's not dependent upon our circumstances, but rather it's dependent upon our relationship with the Father himself. Now there's another unique thing that happens here, all right, in Psalm 98. In verses 1 through 3, okay, it's talking about Israel, okay? It starts with Israel. God's people are singing to him the marvelous things that he's done. They're talking about his righteousness and his faithfulness and his salvation and his steadfast love. But in verse 4, it turns from the past to the present. See, it says, make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. Right? Break forth into joyous song and sing praises. Here's what it says between 4 and 6. It says, sing praises to the Lord with the lyre and the sound of melody, with trumpets and the sound of the horn. Make a joyful noise before the King, the Lord. You see, the joy that Israel was experiencing is brought forth to us in this current day, right now. And so when we make a joyful noise to the Lord with our instruments, right, we need to remember that God is King. He is the Lord, and he's brought us into his kingdom. We're under his rule, and the music and the stuff that we consume needs to relate to him, that we recognize how marvelous he is, right? The praises that we give him, the authority, like the trumpets, right? That he is God in our lives. Make way, the king is coming. And so, in verses 7, we see something else. It moves from the past to the present and then to the future. It says, let the sea roar and all that fills it, the world and those who dwell in it. Let the rivers clap their hands, let the hills sing for joy together. All creation is going to be restored in full harmony as it was in the beginning. We're going to be, it's there with the tree of life in the center and a river down the center. And we're going to look to God in his throne and say, God, you are marvelous. You are faithful. You are righteous. Right? All glory is to you. Right? We're going to be there with God, and we're going to be having to give him the praise. And that's amazing. But we must not forget that when we sing together, right, that it says, before the Lord, when we're singing before the Lord, he comes to judge the earth. All right? He will judge the world with righteousness and the people with equity. God is at the center of the universe. He's going to judge people according to what they have done. Now, the good thing here is that our salvation is not based off of our works. It's based off of his steadfast love and faithfulness to us. Right? It says it right there in the text. What I can tell you is that when we become Christians, right, we must be working to reflect God or Jesus in all that we do. How will the world know what righteousness is if the king's own people are not practicing that righteousness? Therefore, I want us all to try our best, and I know that we can't do it, right? But to try our best to reflect and mimic Jesus to others. Now, I know this might seem cliche, okay? But since we moved back to 1986 to listen to some Peter Cetera real quick, I want us to jump about 10 years forward to the 1990s, okay? And begin to ask ourselves a key phrase. What would Jesus do? What would Jesus do? In fact, Cole is going to put some What Would Jesus Do wristbands out in the back. So if you want to take one on your way out, feel free. But if we can actually answer that question with the action that we are about to take, then we can be sure that we are modeling righteousness for others. In fact, what we put our time into, right, what we listen to, what we take in is going to come out of us, right? Like I said in the beginning, show me the content and I'll show you the intent, right? Show me the contents of your heart and I'll show you the intentions of your heart. Now, I don't know about you, but my eyes started to sweat a little bit when we sang Heart of Worship earlier, right? Yeah, well, none of my other body, just my eyes. Right? And I know Clark was really enjoying Heart of Worship as well. But show me what the content of your heart, and I'll show you the intentions of your heart. Does it show joy for God? Is it a reflection of his marvelousness? Is it a reflection of his righteousness? What about his faithfulness or his love? Right? Is it a reflection of the salvation that we have been given to bring others? Friends, as we go throughout this week, let us reset our music, right? The music that we consume, or the stuff that we consume, right? And implement a more God-centered playlist, right? So that we can find joy in his marvelousness. We can find joy in his righteousness. We can find joy in his faithfulness, his love, and his salvation. So that we can be a bridge from Christians to others to bring more people to him. And in the end, for all of us who've been saved, to live in harmony with his creation.